How does proportionality apply to private military companies in IHL? Have you ever wondered how the principle of proportionality affects private military companies in the context of international humanitarian law? Let's break it down. Proportionality is a key rule in international humanitarian law that aims to limit civilian suffering during armed conflict. It prohibits attacks that could cause excessive civilian harm compared to the military advantage expected from the attack. This principle is vital for protecting civilians and civilian objects in war. When it comes to private military companies, or PMCs, they are considered non-state actors in armed conflicts. Just like regular armed forces, PMCs must follow the rules of international humanitarian law, including the principle of proportionality. However, applying this principle can be challenging for PMCs. First, let's talk about the assessment of military advantage and harm. PMCs often do not have the same level of integration within a state's military command structure. This lack of integration can make it difficult for them to evaluate whether the civilian harm from an attack is excessive compared to the expected military gain. The judgment relies heavily on military necessity and the specific context of operations. Without proper command integration, PMCs may struggle to make these assessments accurately. Next, we need to consider the legal status and accountability of PMCs. They operate under contracts with states or other entities but are not formal armed forces. This situation complicates the enforcement of proportionality rules. States are responsible for ensuring that PMCs comply with international humanitarian law, including the principle of proportionality. This responsibility includes regulation, oversight, and legal accountability mechanisms. Documents like the Montreux Document and the International Code of Conduct for Private Security Companies help clarify obligations and promote compliance. Now, let's look at the protection of civilians. The principle of proportionality is closely linked to this protection. PMCs must avoid attacks that could cause excessive incidental harm to civilians or civilian objects. This is especially important since PMCs often operate in complex environments where civilians are present, increasing the risk of collateral damage. Finally, we must discuss the practical application of proportionality in hostilities. PMCs are required to take all feasible precautions to minimize civilian harm. This means they need to plan and execute operations carefully, follow rules of engagement, and ensure ongoing oversight by the contracting state. In summary, the principle of proportionality is a key constraint on the conduct of private military companies during armed conflict. It is essential for protecting civilians and civilian objects. The challenge lies in making sure PMCs have the right capacity, oversight, and accountability to apply this principle effectively. States must take the lead in regulating and integrating PMCs into military command structures to ensure compliance with international humanitarian law.